Protests against sexual violence will be taking place across France this weekend as the nation comes to terms with one of the most shocking criminal cases it's ever seen. I'm Neil Patterson, and in this edition of The Daily, we're going to be looking at the mass rape trial that is prompting what some are describing as France's MeToo moment. At the heart of the story, Dominique and Gisele Pelicot, a married couple in their 70s. Over a period of 9 years, Gisele was drugged by her husband and, it's alleged, raped more than 200 times by him and dozens of other men. The abuse was often video recorded. As the trial enters its final stages, we will be looking at the crimes and the calls for stronger measures against sexual violence, a warning that much of what follows you may find distressing. Our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins joins us now. Siobhan, take us back to the very beginning. Who exactly are Dominique and Gisele Pelicot?
So Dominique and Gisele Pelicot are a married couple. They've been married for around 50 years. They are now separated. But before this trial began, before the alleged crimes came to light, they lived together in Mazan in southeastern France. And Gisele Pelicot said that they were a very happy couple. They had 3 children. They have 7 grandchildren. And she believed that she was married to a loving husband. That was until police found evidence that her husband had, over this 9-year period, raped her, drugged her, and recruited men online to allegedly do the same. And that has prompted a trial which involves 51 men, including Dominique Pelico. Now, the majority of those men deny the charges against them.
Explain exactly how this abuse came to light in the first place.
This first came to light almost by happenstance. So Dominique Pelico was stopped at a local shopping centre for allegedly trying to upskirt, so film up the skirts of women. And what happened was a security guard spotted him acting strangely. The security guard spoke to the woman. The woman who was being filmed made a complaint. The police investigated. And as part of that investigation, they looked into Dominique Pelicot's computers and they found thousands of files and photographs which showed the widespread abuse of his wife.
Was this material for himself only, or was he sharing this video content?
The allegations in this case are that Dominique Pelico was drugging his wife and raping her, but was also part of an online forum where he was recruiting other men to do the same. So the suggestion is in the trial that he went online and that they came to the house with the intention to rape Gisele while she was drugged. Now, the majority have denied that. Dominique Pelico has admitted that he raped his wife. He has admitted that he was drugging her, that drugs were being crushed and put into her food. And he claims that the men who came to the house were totally aware of the situation, despite the fact that the majority of them deny that.
So how did Gisele first become aware then of these allegations, or indeed of the crimes that Dominique has admitted to?
This was because of this investigation into the upskirting. It's important to say that these alleged rapes had been happening over a 9-year period. And as part of that, her lawyer says she was attacked around 100 times. And that because of that, she contracted 4 sexually transmitted diseases, and she didn't understand what was going on with her health. When she was ill, her husband used to accompany her to the doctors to try and get to the bottom of these gynecological problems. He was sitting there, a man who we now know has confessed to raping her, and he was in the knowledge of the background of why her health was declining.
Was this all simply about sexual gratification on the part of Dominique?
Dominique Pelico said that he was abused as a child and that he did this because he wanted to control women. During the court case, He's been asked whether he did this as revenge because of an affair that Gisele had earlier in their marriage. And he says, no, that wasn't the motivation.
And certainly you see evidence of the control in the instructions that he provided to the men who were coming to rape his wife at his request. I mean, he had very specific instructions as to how they were to behave.
So this case, by its very nature, is particularly harrowing. And some of the details that we've been told about how Benedicte Pelico tried to cover up his crimes involve telling the men that he had invited to the house that they mustn't smoke, that they mustn't wear strong aftershave, so that if his wife woke up in the morning, she didn't smell anything on her skin, that they must park their car around the corner so that no one was alerted, that her body would be cleaned, and he redressed her after the attacks. Every day this case is harrowing. Every single time it sits, the evidence that is presented is horrendous. But things that have particularly stood out is Benedicte Pelico saying to the court, I am a rapist, because I think it's very rare for someone to admit they're a rapist, particularly in open court and particularly in a case of this scale. Other things, the fact that Gisele Pelicot fought with her team to allow the videos or some of the videos of the attacks to be played in open court. She wanted to do that because she doesn't want this to be done behind closed doors. She wants the conversation around consent and a rape and chemical substances being used in rape to be out in the public. And she's really fought to do that.
And Siobhan, Dominique had some very specific instructions that he provided to the men that came to rape his wife, didn't he?
I think other things that I found that quite difficult to listen to are when Gisele Pelicot addressed the court recently. She talked about the fact that she believed for so much of their 50-year marriage that she had this great supportive husband and that she had been completely tricked. We know that there is thousands of videos involved in this case and 51 men on trial, including Benedicte Pelico. But police have said that the videos they found, they believe, could show as many as 83 men, and not all of those men have been identified yet. The majority of the men involved in this case claim that they didn't know that they were raping Gisele Pelicot. Some of them say that they believe that they were involved in a sex game by the couple and that they were being invited to join in on that, that they didn't know that she hadn't consented. So that's really the key part of this trial. Was there consent? Did they know that they were raping her? Because, of course, Benedicte Pelico has suggested that they did, and he has obviously admitted that he did.
What more do we know about those additional suspects, their ages, their professions, their relationship with the Pelicos themselves?
So Gisele Pelicot said that she only recognised one of the men, apart from her ex-husband, in the videos. But the men involved in the recordings and in the case are aged between 26 to 74. They come from a range of different backgrounds. So there's a journalist, lorry drivers, for example, a nurse. The majority of them are from the same area of France, so the local area. But there is obviously still a question mark about the men who haven't been identified, who are filmed and involved in these videos that the police are still looking for. And it's a point that has been underlined by Gisele Pelicot herself in court, where she said, anyone potentially can be a rapist. It could be a father, it could be your next door neighbour, it could be anyone in society. Anyone has the potential to do this.
Well, you mentioned Gisele there. In cases of sexual offending in this country, there is, as I presume there is in France, the affording of anonymity to those who have been the victims of those crimes. Why did she waive her anonymity in this case?
So this is a really interesting point, because this case has been so harrowing, but Gisele decided to waive her anonymity. And she did that because she said, shame must change sides. That all too often in rape trials and trials of sexual assault. It's the victim who carries the shame. And she felt that if the public were able to read the details of the case, that they would understand that it's not the victims who need to be blamed, that the shame lies with the perpetrator. And she said that time and again. And actually, when you go around Avignon, there are banners and graffiti that say shame must change sides, people really rallying behind that call.
I mean, has France as a country engaged in quite the same way with Me Too and accusations of sexual assault by people in power? It feels as if the country has really focused on this case, and it's prompted a really broad discussion about sexual violence against women in that country.
So I think that there are several high-profile cases going on at the moment. For example, French actor Gérard Depardieu is on trial as well at the moment in a totally separate case. But this Pelico case has really underlined specific things, conversations particularly around consent and whether consent should be added to the legal definition of rape in France. So whether that needs to change, but also around drugging and sexual assault, and really myth busting this idea that people who are raped after being drugged are often only attacked in clubs.
Do you feel that Gisele's undoubted bravery in facing her attackers, and the crimes committed upon her head on, do you feel that the French psyche is shifting as a result of this, that this could be a pivotal moment for French society?
I think that it's played a pivotal role in bringing those really important conversations, particularly around consent, but also about drugging and sexual assault, into the spotlight, and really made this not just a debate that maybe women are having. This is a debate that people are having across the country at high levels. It's bringing thousands of protesters out onto the streets calling for change. And that is an important message. But I think also this trial has served as something of a guiding light, I suppose, for other victims, because Gisele Pelicot, time and again, has said one of the reasons that she's done this is so that even if one person is at home reading the newspaper or listening to what's happened in court and they are a victim of rape, but they feel that if Gisele Pelicot can stand in court and do this and stare at the alleged perpetrators, then I can do this too. And that's what she said. She really wants to try and give courage and hope to other victims of rape.
Welcome back to the podcast, where we continue to discuss what could well prove to be the French trial of the century. I want to bring in at this point Benedicte Martin, a spokesman for MeTooMedia and herself a sexual assault survivor. To start with, what effect has the Pelico trial, had on the people of France? It certainly seems to have sharpened people's attention.
Yes, in France, it's a huge case that's totally incredible. People, for the first time, I think, in France, can see how rapists are so random, are so normal, are so ordinary. A rapist can be a father, a grandfather, a nurse, a journalist. People in France say it's like a blast, really. People say, okay, it can happen in my village, in my family, perhaps. It's important to say Gisele Pelicot is not a young woman. She's a grandmother. And that's very important to see in France. For the first time, realize that if you are raped, this is not because of you're pretty, of you're looking for it, of you are searching, of you are teasing man. It's because this is a question of domination. Gisele Pelicot is not a sex symbol, so that's very important to notice that this is not because she's wearing a skirt, a dress, she was makeup. It's really random, normal. People realize that rape can arrive to everybody at any time.
Why has this been such a revelation for so many people in France, that rape can happen to anyone and be perpetrated by anyone? I mean, does France have a problem with sexual violence?
Yes, for example, culturally, we are a very patriarchy society. In school, we are learning the Marquis de Sade, for example. That's very sexual. We study that a woman, a young woman, can be educated sexually by older men. When I was younger, there is lots of movie with Lolita, or for example, for prostitution with Belle de Jour, with Catherine Deneuve in the 70s. So this is a very cultural. Men in France are very macho. For example, in France, in the marriage, the rape was recognized and just 14 years ago. So that's very new. We have a problem with the consent too. Men don't understand why they have to ask, because in France, lots of people don't know the difference between forcing a woman and being a little bit pushy in a love affair. They don't see the boundaries.
There will be people listening to this podcast who will be genuinely shocked that it was only in the last decade and a half that rape within marriage was recognised in France. With the trial, the bravery of Gisele Pelicot in speaking out
Yes.
and waiving her anonymity, with the protests that are taking place now and over the weekend, I wonder, is there an opportunity now for France to become that much more progressive?
This is a big opportunity to see France in a mirror. So look how we are for the rest of the world. Look how we can be ashamed of what happened in our country. And we can see that since 2 weeks in France, lots of women who are beginning to have a trial for rape decide to open the door like Gisele Pelicot did, because usually in France the doors of the trial are closed, and now they are decided. Gisele has decided. That's why it was so viral. But now women in France decide to open the door of the trial and say, okay, you will see my face. I have not to be ashamed. The shame, it's for them. It's for my rapist. She encouraged all the women in France.
What first needs to change in France as a result of Gisele's undoubted bravery?
First, this is how the women, when they are going to the police, are received. Please, policemen, stop asking us how we were dressed, if we are drinking, why we are out tonight. So when a woman going to the police, she's very bad received. And lots of women don't go to the police for that. It's only one woman for 10 who are going to the police after a rape in France. So because they are afraid of the treatment of the people who are chatting, oh, look at her, she was raped.
Benedicte, I wonder then, as a survivor of sexual assault yourself, what you think of Gisele Pelicot.
She's so strong, and I'm very proud of being a French woman like her. She makes me proud, really. And in France, now you can write to Gisele a letter. You can post a letter without address or without stamp. And the post in France we send to Gisele. It's like Santa Claus, because Gisele has become a kind of icon. Gisele said too that she was totally destroyed by this story. Her life is totally destroyed. She hopes she will have time, because she's 72 years old. She has time to rebuild herself and to learn again to be happy. I think everybody in France hoping for this. She showed us that it's possible to recovering. It's difficult, but it's possible.
Benedicte Martin, lovely to talk to you. Thanks for your time. We've recorded this podcast on the afternoon of Friday the 22nd of November. The trial is ongoing, but we are expecting a verdict around the 20th of December. On that day, Gisele will discover how many of those 50 other men who are on trial will be found guilty or not guilty of raping her. That's your lot for this edition of The Daily. Indeed, for The Daily this week. We're back on Monday. We'll see you then.